Hey everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. I'd like to open the show today with just a thank you to our audience, to all of you watching. We got our first milestone here this past week when the censor beasts lifted the censorship of our channel. It didn't take long. It took about 28 days and we hit 100,000 subscribers very quickly, and we just received that plaque from YouTube. I want to thank all of you for subscribing and helping support our mission to save 100 million lives. And I just wanted to share that milestone with you because couldn't do it without you. And for those of you who are new to the show, hit that subscribe button and that bell below, and hit that like button. Those are all ways you can support us in such a way that it doesn't cost you any money, but it helps us reach more people and it helps us save more lives. So help us in that mission. So today we're going to take your questions. We've got some great ones. If you missed the show on Tuesday on heartburn, you can check that out. I don't know if we have a link we can post to that. We'll put it down in the feed below. Go back and watch that. We talk all about how to naturally overcome heartburn and get off your PPIs. Let's answer the questions. I like this one. James says, Doctor, do you make your own theme music to the channel? It's amazing. No, that actually is the talent of Mel, our videographer. He actually wrote that music. I said, I like Alice in Chains. And he said, I have something like that. We wanted to have something that fit kind of that Alice in Chains and Twilight Zone kind of mix, and he nailed it. So thank you for noticing. I know we've had mixed reviews on the music, but I think music is one of those things that's relative, right? Your taste is not necessarily everyone else's, so thanks for commenting. Let's see here. Yeah, so some commentary. My own acid reflux turned out to be gallstones stuck in the duct. Yeah, as we were talking about earlier this week, acid reflux is commonly like the mantra that's shouted if you have the symptoms of pain in your chest area or you have a burning sensation in your stomach area, making the claim without actually understanding why the problem or why the pain exists, and that's just super common. Somebody's asking about hiatal hernia. So Angela's asking about hiatal hernia. If you've got a hiatal hernia, one of the best things that you can do is, first of all, go back and review that past show, because I talked about certain foods that can loosen the valve and can help to contribute to hiatal hernia. And one of the more common ones is actually peppermint. A lot of people use peppermint as a digestive aid, and peppermint loosens that valve and that sphincter, and so it can actually lead to some regurgitation of acid up into the esophagus. So there are a number of different foods that can do that. Go back, I had a list in that show, and you can go check those out. But the other thing you can do, Angela, is a good chiropractor can adjust your hiatal hernia. Sometimes it's just a matter of a physical maneuver that can push that hernia back and approximate that hernia back into the stomach. So get a good chiropractor who knows how to adjust a hiatal hernia, and that might also be very helpful. Thoughts on keeping blood viscosity better by using Wobenzyme. So I don't use that particular product, but what it is, Barbara, is it's a proteolytic enzyme formula, and it can be very helpful in supporting healthy blood viscosity, but generally, to me, it's not the go-to. The first go-to, if you're trying to maintain healthy blood flow, healthy blood viscosity, so proteolytic enzymes are not essential nutrients, but omega-3 EPA is, and most people are deficient in EPA, and EPA deficiency can increase blood coagulability. Vitamin K is important. Vitamin C is important. You also have magnesium, which inhibits or reduces platelet aggregation and actually helps to keep blood viscosity healthy. Blood sugar control, chromium, zinc, all these are essential nutrients that help your body manage healthy blood viscosity. I think blood viscosity is an entire show we need to do because the question has come up a lot lately. Let's see. What type of magnesium do you recommend for slow motility? Magnesium citrate's a good a good type of magnesium, magnesium glycinate, magnesium bisglycinate, all good for motility, all good to bring water into the bowel and help with bowel movements. Magnesium threonate, though, is not the best choice in that regard. Magnesium threonate is better if you're struggling with anxiety, or if you're struggling with getting to sleep at night. Magnesium threonate, threonate is a binder, and what it does is it helps shuttle magnesium across the blood-brain barrier, so you get more of that magnesium going to your brain. And so again, those of you that struggle with sleep, threonate would be a better choice for that scenario. Hello from Pennsylvania. I have seen on your slides potatoes as a possible contributor to leaky gut. Can you explain the connection between potatoes and leaky gut? Okay, so yes, potatoes can. Now, this isn't true for everyone, and I don't want everybody to think that I'm the potato police today. I'm more the gluten police than the potato police. But white potatoes contain a compound called solenoids. And in some early research is now showing that solenoids, not for everyone, but for some people, can be a contributing factor in leaky gut. And yes, this includes white potatoes like russet potatoes, so nightshade family potatoes. Question was, do I make only a magnesium citrate? And the answer is no. I like to blend the magnesiums, and so my favorite formulation is Ultra MG, Jessica. And if you're interested in that and you want to read more about it, we'll put a link up for you. Let's see here. Are there any gluten-sensitive HLA-DR genes? Not worth measuring, Dahlia, no. Stick to HLA-DQ if you're trying to figure out gluten sensitivity. My pregnant wife has been showing signs of gluten intolerance, but now she feels sick even after eating things with zero gluten. What can we do? Well, pregnancy is a different beast altogether, Jim, because a lot of women get nauseous during pregnancy, and so that could be part of what she's experiencing. And so it's hard. It's really, really hard to try to really determine whether or not a food is an irritant or whether the pregnancy is actually creating a problem with nausea. So, you know, for most women, good news here, most women get out of that feeling in the second trimester. And so then it might be you might be better able to help narrow down which foods might be problematic just from a symptom perspective alone. But if you're not sure, you know, my advice would be, if you're not sure about gluten, you get genetically tested, have her genetically tested, or doctors may be willing to do that. The test is called an HLA-DQ molecular analysis. You can ask for that because if it's positive, you know, as a general rule of thumb, she's genetically predisposed to reacting to gluten should she eat it, and so it's the best thing to do in that situation is to not eat gluten. But again, you got to get past that potential for pregnancy to disrupt symptomatically what is causing why she feels sick. And again, and I don't know, when you say feel sick, does that mean an upset stomach? Does that mean she's got a fever? Does that, you know, there are a lot of meanings behind feeling sick, but you know, I would think most people would mean feeling sick to their stomach in relationship to pregnancy. So, question about Bragg apple cider vinegar was bought by somebody else. I can't speak to that because I'm not knowledgeable about who could have potentially bought Bragg's brand, and whether they're a reputable or good company or whether they're not. I personally don't use a lot of apple cider vinegar, so it's not something that I even use. But if I were in the market for it, I would certainly do my diligence and look up an organic brand. I'd want to have an organic brand, and if I couldn't find one, I probably would make it myself. Vinegar is very easy to make. How's our audio? Is it coming in clear? Bonnie, if my voice is cutting out, maybe your connection. I don't think anybody else is seeing choppy audio. Okay, let's see here. Are cataracts inevitable? Everyone tells me it's part of aging. How can I prevent them from occurring? I would say no, they're not inevitable. There are certainly plenty of people that don't get them. a lot of people do. I would say, if just from a prevention standpoint, we have a really in-depth article, Dahlia, that I'm going to refer you to on vision and eye health. If we can pull that up off of Gluten-Free Society and post that for Dahlia. Because there's a lot of preventative strategies within that you can make sure that you're doing in order to maintain good eye health. My grandson shared his cold with me. That's always fun, isn't it? How much Ultra Zinc and Detox C can I take? I'm 72. So depending on how much you weigh, Linda, anywhere from 50 to 75 milligrams of zinc. So if you're using my Ultra Zinc, that would be 2 to 3 capsules a day. And as far as vitamin C goes, generally with a cold, I start at 5 grams with adults. And so that would be, if you have pills, that would be 5 pills. If you have the powdered version, that would be 1 3/4 teaspoons. And I would do that in divided doses. And with the zinc, don't take it on an empty stomach. Definitely take your zinc in divided doses with food, because zinc can cause stomach nausea, and you don't want to have a cold and have a nauseous stomach as a result of taking zinc on an empty one. So again, 50 to 75 milligrams of zinc, and then 5 grams of C. And some people, 5 grams is too much with the C. You'll know it if your bowels become really loose. So kind of let your bowel function be the judge of whether or not you're getting too much C with that. But 5 is a good place to start. Can you explain the process of how gluten causes PCOS in some people who have the sensitivity genes? Yeah, so PCOS is, if we really call it what it is, I mean, doctors like to give fancy names for things, but polycystic ovarian syndrome is really nothing more than diabetes of the ovaries, if you really want to simplify it. It is an issue where high carbohydrates lead to cystic formation in the ovaries due to hormonal changes of the high carbohydrate intake. And gluten-based foods are super high carbohydrate, but gluten also causes damage to hormones. In essence, it can cause several different changes. In the medical literature, there's a condition called polyendocrine syndrome, and this is just a family of different diseases that affect endocrine organs and glands that we know gluten can contribute to and create, and PCOS is one of them. But then there's also the secondary effects of gluten, which is malabsorption, malnutrition, damage and inflammation, and leaky gut, and that leads to vitamin and mineral deficiency. And so with PCOS, a lot of times what we see are chromium and zinc and magnesium and B vitamin deficiencies, which contribute to elevations in poor blood sugar control, which can exacerbate and heighten PCOS. So that's the simple answer. I think that's another topic we could do a whole show on and go deeper and go more in depth. But that's the, if you will, Lisa, the mini crash course. Virginia's asking, what's your opinion on what causes thyroid nodules and what can be done to reduce them? Thanks for all you're doing. You're welcome, Virginia. So thyroid nodules, in my experience, thyroid nodules can be caused by several different things. I mean, there are a number of different environmental chemicals people can be exposed to that contribute to thyroid dysfunction and nodule formation. But one of the big ones is really, frankly, is gluten. We see this all the time. I get people all the time where they've come in to my practice, they're endocrinologists, hit a roadblock, their condition wasn't getting better, so they referred them to me. And, we take them gluten-free, and lo and behold, their nodules go away. Gluten is known to induce an antibody response that can contribute to thyroid nodule formation. So taking gluten out of the diet could be a potentially game changer for thyroid nodules. Now, other nutrient problems like iodine, for example, iodine deficiency is also known to contribute to nodule formation. Your thyroid gland, which is responsible for producing T4, is, understand that the 4 in T4, if we break it down, the 4 is iodine, right? So the T stands for tyrosine. Tyrosine is an amino acid that you can eat from healthy protein sources. And then iodine, 4 molecules of iodine. So the way your thyroid gland produces iodine is by combining tyrosine with 4 molecules of iodine. And if you don't get enough iodine, your thyroid gland can develop nodules as a result, or little mini goiters, if you will. As a matter of fact, this is the very reason why we have fortified table salt. If you ever pick up a box or a canister of salt at the grocery store, your traditional salt, you'll notice it says iodized. Iodinization of salt occurred as a result of epidemic thyroid nodules in the early 1900s, when people were moving in mass quantities to the Midwest, where there's a section along the northwest aspect of the U.S. called the goiter belt, and this is where iodine deficiency is rampant because there's no iodine really in the soil. So people were developing iodine deficiency much more frequently in that region, and so the solution, nationwide, was to introduce iodine into salt, because at the time in the early 1900s, remember that most people they took their food and they preserved it with salt. Salt was a major preservative. Unlike today, most people buy processed food and it has other preservatives in it, chemical preservatives like BHT and BHQ and MSG. Whereas again, going back to the early 1900s, salt was the major preservative. So that was the solution at the time. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I've been having pain in my lower back for a few months now, sometimes even around my hip, and it will tingle down my legs, sometimes even into my foot. Any ideas? Any ideas keeping that nerve from being pinched? Lots of ideas. I mean, Cupcake, I don't know if that's your name or your business, but it just seems silly saying Cupcake out loud. No offense. Traction would be an option for you. Now, there are different kinds of traction. You can go to like a PT or a good chiropractor who has a mechanical traction table, and you can get traction therapy. But there are also in the gym, there sometimes are devices where you can actually do traction on your own. There's a machine in most gyms where you can do an exercise called back extensions. And in those machines, you can actually literally get in them and hang and let your torso hang and let gravity just naturally traction your spine. That's one way to take pressure off of a nerve. And so that's just, again, a mechanical form of gravitational assistance. You can also get chiropractic manipulation. That's another great way, to strengthen and shore up and position the spine so that there's less of a likelihood that you'll develop that problem. But also I would consider a type of exercise called McKenzie exercises, McKenzie. There's a lot of videos that you could look up on McKenzie exercises. These are specific exercises that can take that nerve pressure and reduce it. But you've also got to consider strengthening, looking for muscular imbalances and strengthening and shoring up your spine. I mean, this is a very important part of prevention. Exercises right now may not be as easy if you're having neurological pain going down your leg, but once you kind of get that under control, you've really got to consider the rehabilitative strengthening and stretching exercises to keep your spine stable to prevent that from happening. So start there and come back and let us know how that works. Suggestion for somebody with a glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency experiencing severe lactic acidosis. You might try creatine monohydrate as a supplement. It might help give you, because G6PD is a genetic issue. But creatine monohydrate as a supplement might get you some benefit or some relief. We use that a lot in people with that type of issue, but also in people with issues like fibromyalgia, and it can be very helpful. This is a loaded question. Sabrul says, what if somebody has 4 triggers for an autoimmune disease and eliminates those triggers, if he gets remission, then if he reintroduces one of those triggers, what's the probability that the disease will come? Your guess is as good as mine. I don't recommend reintroducing things that cause disease, though. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's like the diabetic who changes their diet and then they're no longer diabetic, and then they start eating the way they used to eat that caused their diabetes in the first place. It's just not a good idea. But I can't predict the future better than you. I just don't recommend that you consume trigger foods or be exposed to trigger items that you know were driving factors behind your illness. It just doesn't make sense to do that. What can I do to tighten my esophageal sphincter? That's a tricky question, because is it that your esophageal sphincter is too tight or too loose? Or is it herniated, or are you eating certain foods that are loosening it? Again, Jessica, go back to Tuesday's show and check out those different foods, even healthy foods that can loosen or relax the sphincter. Because as a general rule of thumb, The sphincter itself isn't the problem, it's what we do to irritate it or to hinder its functionality. So diet changes is really the way you want to handle that. Question on, do we have a recipe on how to make vinegar? If not, could you make one? Yeah, that's an easy one. We'll put something up for you here in the next round of recipe batch. Let's see, let's go down on the left. Yeah, eye health. Yeah, okay. So yeah, we got that one taken care of. Okay, good deal. Is it true that vitamin D depletes magnesium? Not really that vitamin D depletes magnesium. It's that vitamin D and magnesium have like a hand-holding relationship. They're dependent on each other for functionality. So I wouldn't say necessarily that one depletes the other. I would just say that high doses of vitamin D will put more demand on magnesium. So if your magnesium levels are low and you're super dosing with vitamin D, that magnesium, that already low level is you're gonna get an exacerbation. But vitamin D doesn't necessarily cause magnesium deficiency. What can you recommend for sleep? Taking 6 milligrams of melatonin. I take 1 hour before bed, don't get to sleep for a couple of hours, but wake up so tired the next day it lingers. I do have low or no hormones, inflammation in my body, and MS. I am dairy, gluten, egg-free, eat AIP. You need to get tested, Susan, or is it Suzanne? You know, you're playing with fire. One of the fundamental non-negotiable factors for good health is sleep. And if your sleep is disruptive, there's really no way you're ever going to really heal or repair your MS, even following an AIP diet. And so there are a number of different factors and reasons why you might not be sleeping. But if you're taking that much melatonin, that should be enough to get you to be able to at least fall asleep. So there could be other variable factors. I mean, you could be eating, even on your AIP diet, you could be eating food triggers that are driving up your cortisol at night, and that, when your cortisol is high at night, you're not going to sleep well. You could be being exposed to something, environmentally that is driving up your cortisol. Big time, in my experience, one of the big things that can do that really disrupts sleep in somebody whose diet is really pristine is mold. And so you might look at having your house investigated for the potential of mold issues. And then there are various sundry other things. I mean, with MS, there could be toxic metal exposures that you have that you need to deal with. There could be, like I said, other foods. You might have certain nutritional deficiencies that help play a role in the regulation and the production of melatonin, things like B12 and magnesium. These are all possibilities, and again, I'm just throwing out guesswork at you. But if your sleep is that disruptive, you really need to get some specialized functional testing done so that you can get more accurate solutions to your unique scenario, because there is no one size fits all. Now, what I will do too, Suzanne, we're going to put a link. I did a show all about sleep, and we'll put a link up for that show, and you can go back and watch that. And there may be some pearls and wisdom that you can grab from that show as well. So Juan says, 2 severe and 26 moderate food sensitivities. In general, does the adage, the dose makes the poison apply, when omitting any of these foods? For example, so think of it like this. I'm just going to be very blunt in my language, Juan. When your body's reacting to that many foods, your immune system is pissed. That's basically the way I want you to think about it. Your immune system is mad. It's very angry. It's very agitated. It's like a soldier who's been at war, and they've been shooting and shooting and shooting in a war zone, and then they come home and they try to kind of meld back into normal society, but there's so much post-traumatic stress that if somebody tries to approach them, they end up punching them in the face. That's what your immune system is doing right now. So if you've got basil on your list, and even though it's a low reaction, you still want to avoid it, because anything that you can do to reduce the post-traumatic stress that your immune system currently is facing, you want to do it. You want to do it for 6 to 8 months because your immune system needs that much time to reset. Your immune cells that are circulating in your body right now, 6 months from now, will be completely different cells. They will be replaced by an entire new cell line. And that's what we're aiming for. This is one of the reasons why food sensitivity testing is done. It's to change your diet within a time parameter to allow your immune system to not be agitated anymore so that those cells can give birth to new cells that are less agitated and less prone to driving an aggressive inflammatory response against the very food that you're trying to eat. It's supposed to be nourishing you, but instead is actually acting as a trigger for illness. So don't look at, it's a mistake a lot of people make when they're looking at their result is they're saying, okay, this one's a moderate reaction, this one's a strong reaction. I'm going to fudge and cheat on the moderate reactions because they're not as strong. Don't do that. Avoid them all. You show us many research papers regarding autoimmune disease. Why don't traditional doctors follow those research papers? Do they not study? Is there a conflict of interest with pharmaceuticals? I don't know. I really don't. I can't speak for what other doctors do or don't do. I think if we really, I did a series a while back on the system being broken. Maybe we can put that link to that one up and why the system is broken. Look, I don't blame other doctors, because they were trained to write drugs and to diagnose disease. That's what they were trained to do. What most people don't understand is that doctors, traditional medical doctors, are trained to diagnose disease so they can write drug scripts or perform surgery. That's what they're trained to do. They're not trained to teach you how to live a healthy lifestyle. They're not trained to teach you about triggers for your disease. They're trained in disease management using pharmaceutical drugs. That's what they're trained to do. You can't get mad at them when you go to them and they do for you what they were trained to do. You have to have an understanding, a different perspective, which is, that's what they do. Is that what I want, right? If you have an electrical problem, you don't go to the plumber and get mad at the plumber for trying to make a plumbing recommendation when your problem is electrical. You have to understand it's a market mismatch. Most people don't realize that, and that's really what needs to be understood, is that doctors, what are they trained to do versus what is the public's perception of what they're capable of doing. And so again, if your philosophy around health is, very simply, my body is too weak to sustain health through my life, therefore I need to chemically and artificially manipulate biochemical systems within it so that I can sustain some degree of functionality. If that's your philosophy, then medicine is perfect and it's right up your alley. But if you're looking for why your body's breaking down, you're not really going to find a lot of solutions in a conventionally trained doctor's office, because what you're going to get is a diagnosis and a treatment, but you're not going to get a root cause. They're not going to explain to you, hey, you developed this disease because your behaviors were counterintuitive to the happiness of your genetic expression, right? They're going to tell you that, hey, you have this disease, poor you, you're going to need to be managed for the rest of your life. Take this drug, right? And that doesn't serve you at a high level, in my opinion. This is my philosophy. Many of you may not have the same philosophy, and that's okay too. I'm not here to judge you, but I guess that's the simplest answer I could give you. I can't speak for why they don't approach the literature. To me, the way I was classically trained originally as a chiropractor and then went on to additional schooling in nutrition, a lot of these things I didn't learn necessarily as a chiropractor. And so, part of the doctor's job is to understand, and part of the job of college is really, in my opinion, is that you don't go to college to learn. You go to college to learn how to learn. And if you go to college to learn, then when you graduate, you stop learning. And if you stop learning and you're in clinical practice and you're just applying only what you learned, but you're not really learning new things and you're not open to learning new things, and your ego gets in the way of having somebody tell you or teach you something new, then you're probably not going to be very successful at helping people. Because no one knows everything, including myself. And so you go to college to learn how to learn. And so part of what I like to do is, in my schedule every week, are hours dedicated to research and learning. And that's part of why we have this show, is to help you guys in your schedules dedicate hours of the week in your week to learning as well, so that you're empowered to make intelligent decisions. Because I truly believe that doctors should never be held responsible for your health. You're responsible for your health. And if you give that responsibility to a doctor, shame on you. That's your own fault. It's your own fault for giving over such a sacred responsibility to a complete stranger who is, I promise you, doesn't love you more than you love yourself. So you have to take ownership and self-responsibility. Are you planning to publish a No Grain, No Pain cookbook? You know, we've thought about it, Barbara, and I say Barbara. I don't know if that's your name. I'm assuming just on your handle there. But what we have, Barbara. Let's put up our link to our recipe section. We've got like 400 recipes for free, no charge. And you know, a lot of these are my own personal recipes that my wife prepares in our home, and a lot of these are professional recipes. I have a chef on our staff. As part of our mission is to help create ideas for people so that navigating a gluten and grain-free diet is much easier. So that's free. We don't charge for that. It costs me a lot of money to do that, but I believe that as a company, it's my job to provide valuable resources to you guys. And so another cookbook, you know, my experience with cookbooks is usually you buy one, it costs you $40 or $50 if it's a big, thick one. Maybe not quite so much if you buy a smaller one, but you might find one or two good recipes, and the rest of them are all fillers. Well, if you come to Gluten Free Society's recipe section, you've got hundreds of recipes there that cost you nothing, and there's nice pictures, and you can check those out, and it's absolutely free. And they're classified, or they're organized in such a way where you can find no grain, no pain approved phase 1 and phase 2 recipes. So I'd encourage you, you know, anyone watching this now, you know, check that out. Again, we'll put the link below, and check that out. It's a free service that we provide to you, and we add new recipes every month. Again, I have a chef on staff whose job is to create food just for you guys, also for me. So probably not going to do a cookbook. Do nuts need to be raw? I like pumpkin seeds added to salad, but I prefer dry roasted without any oil or salt. No, I'm okay with nuts not being necessarily raw. They can be dry roasted. And there's actually some benefit in some ways to actually cooking them or soaking them, because there are anti-nutrients found in some nuts that can be harder to digest for certain people, especially those of you who are new to the gluten-free diet and your GI tracts maybe have years of accumulated damage and your digestion is a little malfunctioned. 68-year-old female, ruptured appendix, 10 years old. Oh, ruptured your appendix at 10 years old, I assume you mean. Lifelong gastric problems, infertility, 24-week premature disabled daughter, low thyroid diagnosis at 55, Synthroid until demanded TPO testing. Yeah, you need to go gluten-free, Catherine. Definitely go gluten-free, go no grain, no pain. And if you're asking whether or not you could schedule a nutrition consult with me, yes, we do out of state, and you just reach out to my office, 281-240-2229. And talk to one of our ladies, and they can get you set up. Hello, I'm celiac DQ8, but don't eat any gluten and hardly any rice. Well, hardly any rice doesn't mean, so Monica right there, that tells me you're not gluten-free. There's gluten in rice. I know that's not what maybe you learned, and that's not what the traditional food labeling laws say, but rice has gluten in it, so you can't say I'm gluten-free in one breath and then say, but I do eat some rice. You're still getting gluten exposure. So the question being, what can you eat for a substitute? You don't do sweet potatoes either. Who says you need a substitute? I think that's part of the struggle for a lot of people. You know, people ask me, what can I have as a rice substitute? Or they ask me what I eat as a rice substitute. I'm like you, Monica, I don't do well with wild rice. You know, I'm allergic to grass, and so it doesn't do well with me. I don't eat it. I certainly don't eat regular rice. I guess if we were going to talk about a substitute, maybe you could do like a cauliflowered a rice where you basically take cauliflower, organic cauliflower, put it in a food processor and hit blend, and it blends it up nicely, and it gives you kind of a rice texture consistency. So that would be an option or an alternative. But I would also say that maybe don't think about it as what can I use as an alternative. Think about it as what other food options have I not discovered? What other culinary delights have you failed to try or failed to discover that if you opened up that realm of possibilities, you could encourage a greater diversity in your diet even though it's not necessarily a rice per se substitute. I would just encourage you to expand in that realm and not necessarily look at life as what can I eat instead of this cereal that is cereal, or but it is grain free, or what can I eat instead of this rice that is rice but is grain free. People get kind of stuck in old habits, and I'm just encouraging you to expand out and try new things. For chemotherapy, is it bad to take B12 and folate when your creatinine is 300 micromoles per liter? No, I mean, no, because B vitamins come out very easy. They're not putting pressure on the kidneys. I mean, those would be ones I wouldn't so much worry about. So no, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with using B vitamins in somebody in that situation. How do you reverse diarrhea? I don't eat grains or dairy, and it started almost 2 weeks ago. Depends on what's causing it. I mean, if you've got diarrhea out of the blue, a lot of times diarrhea can be caused by different kinds of bacteria or fungal overgrowths within the GI tract. There may be other foods that you're eating beyond dairy and grains that are also triggers. Vitamin A deficiency, glutamine deficiencies can cause diarrhea. Zinc deficiency can cause diarrhea. Vitamin B3 deficiency can cause diarrhea. There are just a lot of possibilities there, Jennifer. One thing there's a couple things you could try. They're relatively inexpensive. You could do at home. Number one is use Ultrabiotic Defense. It's a high-dose probiotic. It's hundreds of billions of colony-forming units of Bifidobacter and Lactobacillus. You drink it in a glass of water, and do that once a day for a little bit. Generally for a few days. And if it's going to be helpful, you're going to know pretty quickly. It'll be helpful within days. It won't take months. Because you don't want to let chronic diarrhea go on and on and on, because it'll dehydrate you and you can end up with some major problems. So, the other thing I'd recommend you do is get it checked out. Maybe ask for a stool test where they do a culture and see if you have a bacterial infection or a bacterial issue that needs to be treated in a different way. But the simplest thing to try just kind of at home would be a good, solid, high-dose probiotic first. And then beyond that, you really should get testing done. See a doc. What would I do for idiopathic kidney disease that's gotten a lot worse and the nephrologist has no idea why? Yeah, I mean, the kidney problems oftentimes are gluten related. So, I mean, the first thing I would just do on a guess, if it were me with kidney disease, is I would definitely go gluten grain free. Beyond that, testing. I've seen cases, Dana, where people came in. I actually had a case not very long ago. It was a stage 4 kidney failure, looking at dialysis and premature demise, right? And now he's not in stage 4 kidney failure. And how did that happen? What led to the accomplishment of that? That was diet change. And so, in that regard, we could speculate and guess what kind of diet change. And, I'm always very partial to, my own experience in this, which is no grain, no pain. That would be the diet recommendation for anyone who's just saying generically, what should I do right now? Like, do that first, especially when your nephrologist has run out of ideas. But I would say beyond that, you got to get some unique testing done. There are 4 categories of tests that you should look to do. You want to rule out food as a trigger. You want to rule out chemical exposures as a trigger. You want to rule out microbes as a trigger, and you want to rule out nutritional deficit as a trigger. And those are all things that I would do. If you were to come to my practice, those are all things that I would do, immediately to get better insight as to what kind of diet and lifestyle changes you should be making to support your kidney recovery. I don't eat grains, no gluten. How about sweet potato? I eat them every day, maybe too much carbs. My feet swell a little after meals. Well, I mean, sweet potatoes are fine. They're grain-free. If you're gluten sensitive and you're trying to avoid gluten itself, then yeah, sweet potatoes are okay in that regard. If you suspect, though, that the sweet potatoes are causing your feet to swell, you might want to get tested to see whether or not you're reacting to them in a delayed fashion. Ask your doctor, Gil, if they'll test you, and if they won't, we could put a link up below or you can go get that kind of testing done on, at Gluten-Free Society. But the other thing is, if you're vegan, meaning no animal products whatsoever, something I would highly encourage you to do, especially if your feet are swelling, is just get good nutritional workup done, where you check your amino acids and other nutrients like zinc and vitamin B12, because there are, in vegans, sometimes what can happen, and this has been really well researched, is that many vegans have an issue with their hearts. Even though a lot of people make the decision to go vegan for heart improvement, some, when they go vegan, it takes about 18 months, but what happens is your liver stores about 18 months worth of vitamin B12. And so being on a purely vegan diet, you get a year and a half in, that B12 drops. B12 is responsible for regulating a chemical called homocysteine. And homocysteine, when it elevates, can cause damage to your heart. And that's one of the side effects of heart damage, is swelling in the feet. And so it might not be a bad idea just to ask your doctor to check your homocysteine levels, check your B12, and just make sure, if you're going to follow a vegan diet, that you're not missing something nutritionally. And that if you are, add that as a supplement, or look at, potentially other plant-based foods that, would be better sources than maybe what you're currently eating. But I wouldn't just sit back on that feet swelling and ignore it for too very long, because that could be an underlying heart issue that you don't want to have any surprises. Hearing loss. Anything for hearing loss? Hearing loss is a tough one. Depends on why you have hearing loss. I mean, I've seen cases where hearing loss improved in people. I've seen cases with diet change. So again, I would say, generically speaking, start with no grain, no pain, but it's very common for toxic metals like lead to affect hearing and create things like tinnitus and hearing loss. And so getting tested and ruling that out might be helpful for you as well. I've been losing energy. Any help? Well, that's kind of a broad one. Did we do a show on energy?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, because that just, we could talk for hours on that one. So what I'm going to do is below, I'm going to put a link to a show that we did, a crash course on how to improve your energy. Is there something else that could cause low insulin that's different than B12, magnesium, and zinc? Yeah, lots of things. One of the biggest things is diet. I mean, your pancreas is not, well, let's just say it's not immortally capable of making insulin on demand if you abuse it. And so what happens for a lot of people is their diet is so high in carbohydrate percentage-wise. What should it be percentage-wise? Your diet should be approximately 30 to 40% carbohydrate, or no more than that. And it could be less, but it shouldn't be any more than that. And so what happens is most people are 60+% carbohydrate in their diet. And what that does is all of that carbohydrate is going to put pressure on the pancreas. It's going to send chemical messages to the pancreas. And then the pancreas is going to have to try to compete and keep up with the level of carbohydrate, the overabundance of carbohydrate that's coming in. And what can happen to the pancreas over time is its reserve kind of runs dry. And so initially you might get the spike in insulin, but over time your insulin levels start to drop. And so that's generally, one of the mechanisms. Now, one of the others is vitamin D. You've got more vitamin D receptors on the pancreas than any other area of the body. And vitamin D regulates the message between your glucose signaling your pancreas to produce insulin. So vitamin D is very important in that regard. So have your 25-OHD levels checked as well. I've been diagnosed with a sliding hiatal hernia. Can you tell me what sliding means? That means it goes in and out. This is in a situation where a good chiropractor, Cheryl, who understands how to adjust a hiatal hernia, might come in handy for you. Oh, that's a tough one. So Aiden says, hello, massive thanks for being the gift and contribution. What could you suggest for salivary glands that are burnt by chemotherapy treatment? any correlation with grain. Can be. I mean, there's a condition, it's not related to chemo, but it's a condition called Sjogrens, and it's an autoimmune disease where your salivary glands can come under attack, and so it can cause you to have super dry production or lack of salivary production. And so grain is definitely correlated with Sjogrens. You know, a lot of people I have seen with Sjogrens, you know, find that their eyes and the mouth are no longer dry, because severe dryness of the eyes and mouth, again, that's a Sjogrens that's a Sjogren's pattern, and going gluten grain free can be helpful with that. But beyond that, you know, what heals people post chemotherapy is good, solid nutrition. You've got to have good nutrition program in place before, during, and after chemo. And if you don't, you know, chemo is an anti-nutritive tissue destroyer, right? And so the damage that it created has to be healed, and that healing requires nutritional resource. And if you're not supplying what your body needs to overcome that, then you're going to continue to struggle. So one of the best things you can do if you're, you know, getting cancer treatment, you're getting chemo, get with a nutritional doctor. Have your nutritional status checked. Don't not do this. Look, at a lot of chemo docs, a lot of cancer docs will tell you that nutrition's not important. They're wrong. Cancer is a disease of nutrition. We know that. It's definitely a disease of nutrition. Nutrition's a major part in it. So don't ignore that, because what you're doing with chemo is you're poisoning the tumor while you're poisoning yourself. And it's a race. Does the tumor die faster than you, right? And so what could you do to support your body's recovery? You could understand how to better address your nutrition, your carb, fat, protein, your vitamins, your minerals, all need to be measured so that you have a good understanding of how to accommodate your diet right, because you don't want to guess at this. You know, you're not playing around with something that's minor. You're playing around with a big disease that can kill you. You need to go ahead and get tested. And that's true of anyone with cancer going through any kind of cancer treatment. Get tested and get on the right diet if you want good recovery and you want good outcomes. Is there dosage for vitamin C that can help with constipation without going all the way to painful diarrhea? Yeah, the dose is titratable, Cheryl, and it's not like one dose. For some people, that dose is 2 grams. For some, it's 5. What I would suggest is start with 1 gram, and then each day increase it by 1 gram until you hit a level where your bowels are starting to move for you. You know, so start low and work your way up, as opposed to doing that major flush where you clean yourself out. I like this. So Dynamic Wellness says, "Hi, Dr. O, wanted to share that I successfully helped a client get off 30 years of prescription antacids. Your digestive enzyme and hydrochloric acid supplements were a big help. Thanks for sharing. That's fantastic. I love that you're changing lives out there in the world." Do grains contribute to lichen planus? Yes, in my experience they do. That's a video topic I think we have in our list of videos that we've got on the queue. Is it possible to change the genetic expression of someone with hemochromatosis? I mean, you got to be more specific, Gene. If you're saying, is it possible to not have a high iron issue when you have hemochromatosis genes? The answer is yes. I see it all the time in families where the genes are there, but the expression of high iron as a phenotypic expression is not there. So yeah, I believe it is. That being said, I don't know if that's the question that you were asking. I have difficulty learning and I have some anxiety. What's the reason? Your guess is as good as mine. It's not enough information to really give you a solid answer. I mean, there's a 1,000 things that can cause anxiety. Start with the 4 categories that you hear me talk about repetitively. There's a reason why I repeat. One thing any of you have been watching me for any length of time understand is that I'm very consistent. I don't bounce. My opinions don't change. There are 4 triggers for inflammation: food, chemicals, nutritional deficits, and microbial imbalances. That's where you start. Always start there. If you're ever wondering, start there first. We did do, I think, a show on brain inflammation, and anxiety is a form of brain inflammation, and so you might find benefit from watching that show, and you might find, again, some nuggets that you can start applying right away. Do I think that mineralizing toothpaste work for cavities, or does the calcium mag minerals have to come from within? I think both. I don't know that there's any great research, though, that that I could allude to that say that, you know, mineralized toothpaste are, that those minerals actually show up in teeth, because I don't think anybody's done that research. But I've just seen too much anecdote, Tori. And anecdote, to me, is a form of science that's oftentimes ridiculed. But to me, anecdote's a very important form of science, because if somebody's experience leads to improvement, should we dismiss that person's experience just because it was their experience and not double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled? I think with anecdote, we have to be careful on, you know, sometimes what we think happened is not what happened. But I think anecdote is the beginning of science. But it's just my experience that mineralized toothpaste can be helpful. So again, hopefully that's a helpful answer for you. Is there an alternative for the kids' Zinc Soothe in the multis? You're talking about our brand at Gluten Free Society, Savita. One thing you can do, if your child can swallow, you know, you can take Ultra Zinc and take 1 a day. So that would be a supplemental alternative for Zinc Soothe. As far as the children's multi, you know, one of the things you can do is take Ultra Nutrients. You can break it open, the powder inside, and you can dump that powder and make a little smoothie for your son, and then he can drink it, and that would be an alternative where he really wouldn't even know it was there or taste it. So either one of those are possible alternatives. Does red light therapy help eyesight? You know, I'm not an eye doctor, Brenda, and I can't say that I've used red light therapy in that regard, where I could say I've had experience in that way. What we do know is that red light therapy, there is some research on red light therapy helping the eyes, and so that's not uncommon. And some eye doctors actually use red light therapy to help with eye healing. We know that red light therapies, particularly some of the near infrared spectrum, is very healing, and it helps to increase blood flow in deeper tissues of the body. I use red light therapy to recover from workouts. You can use red light therapy, has been shown to be effective at stimulating hair follicles and improving growth of the hair. Red light therapy has been shown to be beneficial in many different aspects, but I don't have any personal experience directly with eyesight, but I do know some of the eye doctors are now using it. And I'm a big fan of red light therapy. Eating 90% meat and fats, 10% fruit, what nutrients could be low or missing with this diet? Vitamin K2, biotin, although if you're eating egg, you're probably getting enough biotin. I would say one of the best things, maybe folate. Again, depending on a big part of this spirit, it depends on whether or not you're eating organ meat. When you say a 90% meat, if you're saying I eat 90% muscle tissue, that's very different than saying I eat 90% meat that's mixed with organs like kidney and liver, because if you're eating the organs, you're getting tons of nutrients. And so organ meat is one of the most nutrient-dense foods. So I would say you're probably okay if you've got a good mix of organ meat in your diet. I mean, the best way to know for sure is to have yourself tested. What supplements or protocol do you recommend for healing the gut while pregnant? Simple things, Jim, in a pregnant woman that are safe, that are not going to create any kind of risk. And again, I'm making some assumptions here, but I would say number one, a good solid multivitamin would be your number one choice. in a pregnant woman because it's going to contain a lot of nutrients that are helpful for gut function. And it's also going to contain a lot of nutrients that are helpful to help that baby grow and help mom have a greater and better outcome. L-glutamine might be a good option. Some of the things that are real safe, natural plant-based things like aloe vera and deglycerinized licorice. We have a product called GI Soothe. We have another one called GI Shield that contains those, and sometimes those are very soothing to the gut and to the lining. And again, we were talking about pregnancy earlier, so this, may be something that symptomatically gives some benefit, but ultimately, if you suspect a problem in a pregnant woman, test. Don't wait, get tested. The 4 categories of tests we've talked about. What foods and supplements are best for alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency? It's not what foods and supplements are going to be best there. I think more than anything, it's going to be what's the driving force behind that illness. Again, going back to inflammation, how do you improve that? Not by eating superfoods that you're allergic to. So get tested. Anytime, a lot of you are asking about general questions about big diseases, and I just want to emphasize that, there's some things that you can always do. And again, the default mode is always going to be no grain, no pain diet, in my opinion. That's just the diet I've had the most experience with in terms of chronic inflammatory conditions and seeing the most impact and effect. And so that's always a great place to start. But beyond that, testing is what I would recommend in that situation. So I had an allergy test done, one that you recommended. The only thing I have a slight issue with is almonds. Almond flour, almond butter is in almost all non-grain items. Any suggestions? Yeah, don't eat them. Pretty simple. Other alternatives for like almond flour based products, if you're looking for other grain-free flours, we actually have a list of grain-free flours, a really good article, and a lot of different alternatives. We can put up a link for you. But, examples like arrowroot tapioca, green banana flour, tiger nut are all potential options as substitute flours. Brenda's asking, she says her daughter has PCOS. Anything outside of a strict keto diet that she can do? Yeah, she needs to get, with PCOS, autoimmune, right? So you need to understand in her situation, what are the driving forces? I mean, keto diet, there's a lot of ways to be keto, and there are unhealthy ways to be keto. So when you say strict keto, I'm not sure what you mean, but I've had some people tell me strict keto, and what they're doing is they're going and buying processed keto cereals. So I don't know what that means without more detail. I would say, avoid grain definitely. If there's any grain at all in her keto diet, that would be a mistake. And then get her nutritionally tested, because as I mentioned earlier about PCOS, a lot of times the blood sugar dysregulation comes from mineral deficiency and from B vitamin deficiency. So chromium is big and important there. Vitamin B3, zinc is important in that regard for blood sugar regulation. Yeah, so this is an example. So this is a great question, follow-up to what Brenda asked, which is, if I mangle your name, I apologize. Julicia said, we are a keto household, but I've noticed in the keto recipe developer area, they're using oat fiber for baking. Is this gluten-free? No, and it's a bad idea and it's a bad choice. This is what I meant. A lot of keto products. Look, anytime a diet becomes popular, the big food corporations like vultures jump on the bandwagon and make products that suck and sell them to you with this fancy, label that says keto approved, or, keto benefit, or whatever it is. Like they put the window dressing on there, but what they're really selling you is a highly processed product that's not good for you, with window dressing that makes it seem healthy. And so don't fall prey to those ideologies. Don't fall prey to those marketers. They want to sell you something that you think you need, and they want to package it in a way that it looks healthy, but they want to put unhealthy and cheap ingredients in it so they can hugely profit off of these trends. The best way to do any kind of diet is to eat real food, minimally packaged. And if there is packaging, you need to read every word on the package and make sure you understand what's in it. If my natural thyroid med is making my heart race and my TSH is 0.09, I wouldn't recommend anything. I mean, I'm not a medical doctor prescribing thyroid medicine, but Barbara, but what I would say is if your TSH is 0.09, you're being over-medicated and you need to go to your doctor who prescribed your medicine and have a conversation, because if your heart's racing and your dose is too high, then a dose adjustment might be what you need to do, and not necessarily a different drug, but just less of the same one. It just depends. But that's a conversation I would definitely encourage you to have with your doc. Do I recommend coffee enemas to cleanse the liver? Not typically, no. I recommend not poisoning your liver in the first place and allowing it to naturally detox. You know, that being said, there are times where coffee enemas are pertinent and are relevant and can be used, and I'm not opposed to using them. I just think that a lot of people use them and begin abusing them without taking the corrective actions within their diet and lifestyle, and then they use those enemas as a crutch to keep pushing through. And I think that's a bad idea, but you know, there are reasons why a person would benefit from those. Do I recommend gallbladder removal? Not really. Most gallbladders that are taken are not necessarily needing to be taken, in my opinion. I'd recommend you look up how to do a gall flush first, but even more than that, I'd recommend that you ascertain why your gallbladder is malfunctioning. I mean, you know, gallbladder, just like your skin, if you get a cut, do you remove your skin so that you don't have a cut anymore? No, you let the cut heal. But in order to let it heal, you can't keep cutting it. You can't keep doing something that irritates the cut. And so this is the same kind of philosophy with your gallbladder. What is it that's irritating your liver and gallbladder that's leading to the dysfunction? That's what you need to determine. Again, 4 categories: food, chemicals, nutritional deficiencies, and microbial imbalance. Those 4 are the things you need to have tested. Problems with DH. So still having a lot of problems with dermatitis herpetiformis after 1.5 years, and getting sunlight makes it worse. Should I avoid sunlight because the burning sensation makes it a lot worse? No, you need to figure out what in your diet. I mean, yes, avoid sunlight, kind of, sort of. I would avoid direct sunlight, but don't avoid going outside. Like get sun, but do it in the shade. But I would encourage you to figure out why you're still getting DH, because if you've been on the diet 1.5 years, either you're getting cross-contamination or you're eating other foods that are also triggers for it. And the most common for people that are going on it, like a traditional gluten-free diet where they're still eating corn, they're still eating rice, it's a bad idea. Those are things you want to cut out. So if you're still doing those things, it doesn't surprise me that you're still having DH. So grain-free, right, as opposed to traditional gluten-free, go grain-free. What type of food sensitivity testing do you recommend? Lymphocyte response. You know, if your doctor doesn't do it, go to Gluten-Free Society. You can read more about it there, but that's the type I recommend. It's the only, in my opinion, the only real accurate way to assess delayed hypersensitivity response. Need opinion of headache, intense ringing in head and ears, wake up with blood in the nose. You need to go see a doctor, Peggy. That's not a do-it-yourself project. You need to go see somebody. I'm not a big fan of methylene blue, so somebody's asking about methylene blue. Not a fan of it. I think if you've got a memory issue, you've got to figure out what's driving the brain inflammation. Methylene blue is not going to solve that for you. A lot of keto questions today. I'm on clean keto and intermittent fasting, still have fatigue and weakness that I can't make it for an 8-hour work. Age 51, have Hashimoto's and menopause. Yeah, I mean, clean keto doesn't mean much. I mean, you're eating less carbs and that may be a good thing for you, but you know, keto is not a right diet for everyone. The diet is pushed as a cure-all by a lot of channels, and I don't agree with that. I think keto can be very beneficial in certain situations, but I also think if you're following clean keto, it's very possible too that you could be reactive to some of the foods in that diet that are generally healthy foods, but just not helpful for you. So getting tested for food sensitivity is probably going to be a good place in your situation to start. What time is it? My stomach's growling, so I know it's coming up to lunchtime. Is it 1:30?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I knew it. I knew it. My son is 5 and his skin gets very itchy, especially before sleep. He's on low histamine diet, takes quercetin DAO to help with that, but still he's not better. What's your recommendation on that? What kind of parasites usually cause high? Parasites, I mean, there's a lot of different parasites that can cause high histamine because parasites allow for the recruitment of eosinophil cells into the GI tract, and those types of eosinophils are histamine releasers. But as far as does your son even have a parasite? So that would be one question. Get him tested. You know, you take him to the doctor and get him a multi-day stool sample test on microscopy to see if he does have any obvious parasites. But one of the other reasons we'll see people develop histamine issues and skin issues is because they're eating food they're allergic to, right? And so the other thing you need to do is get your son tested for food allergies and food sensitivities. And I would do both LRA and IgE testing. IgE is going to be more, IgE reactions are more prone to the histamine response, and so get those measured. The other thing that you might want to consider is environmental mold. It's super common to see kids develop histamine problems at these young ages when there's an environmental mold issue. So there's a urine test that can be measured that can measure mycotoxins or mold toxins in someone's urine, and that might be a good place for you to start trying to rule out whether or not mold is playing a role in that. Yeah, so somebody chimed in, rice has gluten, question mark. So there's always somebody every week that just hasn't, that's new to this concept and new to this information. And that's, again, those of you who are new and you think you're on a gluten-free diet, I challenge you all to get a copy of No Grain, No Pain and read it and get educated. Research is very clear on this. People on gluten-free diets, the vast majority of them don't recover. They have persistent villus architecture problems, and they have persistent inflammation. They have persistent health issues. And most of these people go on to develop an additional 6 forms of autoimmune disease beyond the original celiac diagnosis. And this is very evident and very clear in medical literature. And so usually it's because they're doing the diet wrong. They're not really technically gluten-free. They're wheat, barley, and rye-free. But that's not enough. Remember, there's different forms of gluten in oats and corn and rice and sorghum and millet, even though those grains by law are labeled gluten-free. So get your copy of No Grain, No Pain. If money's an issue, go check it out at the library for free and read it. And also maybe attend my glutenology class. It's a 14-hour long class. It's also free. You can do that for free. Mel, can we put a link up? It's glutenology.net/registration. Go sign up for that class and take it. If you think you're gluten-free and you've been on that diet and you are struggling, there's a very strong likelihood that taking this class will change your life. So do that first, or read No Grain, No Pain and get educated, because there's always somebody, and usually multiple people each week who come in and they just didn't realize it. They just didn't realize that these other grains actually are gluten containing and can cause inflammation, because all the doctors and nutritionists traditionally trained are telling them it's okay. They don't read their own literature. They don't read their own research studies. I've read all the studies on gluten and corn and rice and the other grains, and that's what compelled me to write No Grain, No Pain, was because so many of my own patients weren't getting better. So many of my own patients would go gluten-free in the traditional sense, and then we would get what was called gluten-free whiplash, where they would feel better for several months, and then boom, they would start redeveloping their symptoms again as a result of finding corn and rice products and other things that were labeled gluten-free. And that's, again, that's in my early career. I've been in practice 22 years, and so this was all a revelation to me, 16, 17 years ago. And but today, I've been talking about it for so long now. Today, it's like it's like super top of mind, and it's been literally ingrained in me. So I don't even think about it anymore. But I know a lot of you are new to this concept, so I just encourage you to get educated. Two teenage boys wanting to bulk up. and get stronger like a lot of teen boys desire. I love that, man. I love seeing young boys want to work out. What general tips would you suggest, micronutrients and amounts? Real simple things for teenage boys, 15 to 17. Keep the weight not super heavy. They can get a lot and develop a lot of strength doing body weight and band work, but you don't want to load young boys who have not reached their growth potential yet. You don't want to load their bone plates because you can fuse their bone plates and they won't grow to their full height or their full potential. So they don't want to lift too heavy. So don't, just remind them not to go too heavy. Number two, as far as protein intake, they need to be at 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. You know, that's how we build muscle, is we need protein. And so, you know, a lot of teenagers follow high carbohydrate diets that get nowhere near enough protein to stimulate the amount of bulk they're trying to put on. So make sure they're getting adequate protein. Another good one as supplementally is creatine monohydrate. It's one of the few supplements in the weight building or the muscle building industry that works really well and is safe. There's no real great danger with it. So creatine monohydrate would be something they can use. As far as micronutrients, one of the best things they can do would be a formula like Ultra Nutrients. It's going to contain a battery of all the essential nutrients for them, so they're going to touch a lot of bases with that. If you want to go extra certain micronutrients that are real critical for weight training, zinc, extra zinc, 25 milligrams, and extra magnesium, anywhere from 400 to 600 milligrams each day. And those are just, again, generalities for where they can start. Let's see, 4 months on metformin. Should I change the medicine to something better, more safe? I think, Erland, I think you're asking the wrong question. I think the question you should be asking is not, should I change my medicine? I think the question you should be asking is, why do you need to be on metformin? You know, the medicine is artificially keeping your blood sugar in control, but what are you doing in your diet and lifestyle that's not allowing your body to do that on its own without medicine? That's the bigger question, not what other drug can you use. Every drug comes with a cost. You know, you could do other drugs like Ozempic and some of the insulin mimetics, and those drugs also create problems and have different milieu of side effects on your nutritional status as well. So you're going to trade one problem for another problem, but the real problem is, why is your blood sugar not controlled? You need to watch my class. I have a video on blood sugar, and it's what your doctor didn't tell you about your blood sugar. If we can maybe link her to that video. And I want you to go watch that video. And then I want you to dedicate some time every day to exercise and movement, and dedicate time to educating yourself about diet. Start at no grain, no pain, and then, you know, work your way from there. But we see it all the time. Diabetics reversing their diabetes with diet change. And so if you're, you know, if you're just thinking about what medication can I take, I think that's the wrong question. I have constant pain between my shoulder blades. Is this a disc issue or a nutritional issue? Hard to say. Get an MRI of your thoracic spine, maybe an X-ray. You know, the gallbladder, the liver can refer pain to that area. The heart can refer pain to that area, but more commonly the liver and gallbladder. So you could have a visceral problem with a referral pain issue. You could have an injury to your disc. You could have a muscular issue. I mean, there's a number of different potential reasons that could be happening. But I would start with some investigation. Work with your doctor to do those investigations and get a solid answer. And then once you know what that is, you can take some action on what to do. Do I have a video that discusses sleep? Yeah, I think we put a link up to that already.
That's right.
Yep, we did, yep. Yeah, I like this comment. Somebody, King was just chiming in, had low back pain that resolved with vitamin D. Yeah, vitamin D deficiency can cause pain. There's no doubt about it. And several nutrient deficiencies, B1 deficiency and B12 and folate deficiency, vitamin C deficiency, vitamin E deficiency. So it could be those things. It could be that simple. I hope it is that simple. I hope you don't have a disc that needs to be treated. Dry nasal passages, a lot of different things can contribute to that, but nutrition is very common. Nutritional deficiencies are very common with dry nasal passages, especially like vitamin A, you might consider. I would do good nutritional testing because if you've got a humidifier running and you're still dry, that would be my first thought. I mean, check your humidity as you look at your humidity in your room. If it's, if it's riding somewhere in the 30% range, even with a humidifier running, that for some people does create a dry nasal issue. My thought on GI mapping for GERD, I don't know what you mean by GI mapping. If you're talking about, there's a particular company called GI Map, and I think that technology is very flawed because they use a platform called PCR. And PCR is not really all that effective of a platform for trying to isolate and identify whether or not a person has a microbe that's driving a process like GERD. But that may not be what you mean, Debbie, so I don't want to put words in your mouth. But if that is what you mean, that's my answer. Waking every morning with bad neck pain, have been to chiropractor 7 times, not helping. Any ideas? Hate taking aspirin, wrecking my gut. Get an image done. If you've been to the chiropractor, get an x-ray, get an MRI, make sure you don't have herniated disc or any kind of neurological impingement. That would be something that could definitely contribute to it. But also, simple at-home stuff, stretching of the neck and the shoulders. A lot of times, waking up with neck pain is a bad pillow, or it's bad sleeping position. There's just so many different potential possibilities there that it could be, and it's really hard for me to give you specific, because without seeing you and without actually putting hands to you, it would be hard to know. But again, there are a number of nutrient deficiencies that can contribute to tightening of the muscles, and that, magnesium, calcium, it's not uncommon for those deficiencies to lead to tightness of your neck muscles, leading to headaches and other pains. Do I have a supplement that aids in keeping oxalate stones from developing? You can take calcium. A lot of people are like, calcium, well, my stones are calcium oxalate. Yeah, but if you take calcium with the foods that you're eating that contain oxalate, the oxalate and the calcium will form in your gut. They will bind to each other and you'll poop them out. And so that's one thing you can do. Glucosamine chondroitin with MSM is also another thing that you can do. And so we have a product called Ultra Joint in that regard. But I think the wrong question is being asked here, and no offense to you, Mary Ellen, but the question I would be asking is, why are you forming oxalate stones? In my experience, the 2 biggest reasons I see people making oxalate stones: number 1, they're in mold, and there's a propensity toward oxalate development when people are in mold. And number 2, mold is in you. You have a yeast overgrowth or some other type of fungal overgrowth that's living inside of your body, because there's a biochemical pathway whereby molds or yeasts can produce oxalates. And so that may be the source of what's driving oxalate levels up within you. So I would have those investigated. Is it common to get constipation from quercetin or nattokinase? I take both, but couldn't figure out yet which one causes it. No, it's not. It's not at all common. You may have a unique reaction in that regard. I would just start by removing them both and just making sure there's not coincidence in that, but remove them both. If constipation goes away, then add one at a time for a few days and see if it comes back, and you'll probably get an answer doing that. I love this question. Michelle says, everyone talks about how a sick person should eat. How should a healthy person eat? How many carbs, proteins? There's not a magic answer. That's why very few people talk about it, Michelle. There's not like, this is the healthy man's diet. Everybody that's healthy does this exact same thing. It's What, as you, as a unique person, how many carbs do you need to eat? Well, part of that depends on what kind of demands you put on your body. How much protein do you need? Part of that, how much demand do you put on your body? If you exercise a lot, you need more protein. If you don't, you may need less. If you, I would say start with this. Healthy people eat real food without chemical names that they can't pronounce. That's the simplest and easiest way to begin, right? And then beyond that, healthy people listen to their bodies. When you're eating, if you're developing symptoms or problems, you would analyze your diet and say, why is this happening? And maybe make some adjustments or changes and pay attention to the warning signs that your body may throw your way, and then make the adjustments. What healthy people don't do is take Tums and say, I'm going to eat it anyway. Or, you know what I mean? Like, so listening to your body, this is rule number one, is eat real food. Rule number two is listen to your body because it talks to you. And the more you listen, the better you get at listening. And then rule number three is if you're still struggling, you're healthy, and you want to know specifically what you shouldn't eat, you can get tested. But if you're healthy, you may not want to justify that expense. So again, fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, meats. If you want to start with a generic kind of ratio, I would recommend the rule of thirds: a third carb, a third fat, a third protein. As far as quantity of calories, that's very independent. It depends on your weight, your size. It depends on your energy expenditure. It depends on what you do with your body and how much you need to use it. And so those numbers can vary greatly. So hopefully that's helpful. Can upper esophageal sphincter be fixed without surgery? It depends. I'd say, again, I would say first get your diet under control, because a lot of times the reasons the valves and the sphincters in the stomach and esophagus are damaged is because you're eating things that damage them. And if you get your diet under check, then, you know, just like a cut, it heals. You know, that cut there could potentially heal as well. I can't count the number of times I've seen people told they need surgery, and after changing their diet, they never needed the surgery. So it's just always the best place to start. Okay, let's just do one or two more. Is benfotiamine a stronger version of thiamine? It's not necessarily that it's stronger, Gail. It's just that it's a better absorbed version. It's more bioavailable. It's a fat-soluble version of B1, and it's my preference for supplementation if we're trying to correct vitamin B1 deficiencies. How long does it take before you see improvement? Depends on the nature of the problem. Because if it's a nerve issue, you know, like a neuropathy, and B1 deficiency can very much cause neuropathy. Neuropathies take longer to heal than, say, gastric pain or stomach pain or anxiety. Those are generally quicker to respond. You might check out, Gail, check out my crash course on vitamin B1 deficiency. You know, and you might get some more information out of that's helpful. But again, if you're trying to supplement a B1, benfotiamine, in my opinion, is a superior form than just your standard thiamine hydrochloride. Let's see here. We'll do one more. Okay, so on the sleep talk, did I mention what tests can be done to test for cortisol? Best way to test for cortisol, Katie, is what's called a 4-point cortisol. The cortisol is a circadian hormone, so it's, if you only get it tested at one time, most doctors want you to do a fasting blood cortisol test. And it's fine. It's not that it's inaccurate. It's just that it doesn't give you a complete picture, because your cortisol could be normal in the morning, but abnormal in the afternoon and abnormal at night. So what you really want to do is you want to get cortisol measured in the morning when you wake. You want to get it measured again around noon, again around 4, and then again around 10 to midnight to see the pattern, to see what level of cortisol you're making at different times of the day, because that, again, that hormone adjusts. It's kind of, if we created a diagram, a healthy cortisol pattern would look like kind of a lazy L. It'd be very high in the morning, a little bit less at noon, a little bit less in the afternoon, and a little bit less at night. So just, again, it would be shaped like a lazy L. Sometimes what happens is a person's morning cortisol is normal, their afternoon cortisol is just as high, their later afternoon cortisol is super low, and then their nighttime cortisol is too high. So we get this very different looking pattern. So we want to measure it in four points as opposed to just one blood test in the morning. So that's the best way if you were trying to get an accurate representation of what that hormone is doing. Okay, lots more questions, not lots more time. I think we spent an extra 20 so minutes with you guys today. Look, thanks for being here. Like I said at the beginning of the show, thanks so much for your support. Thanks for helping us hit that 100,000. I think now we're at 111,000. Look, we're growing fast because the censorship is up. Help us keep growing. Remember what our mission is. It's to save 100 million lives, and we can't do that without you. You come here twice a week to get help from me, and I'm asking you to help me reach more people, and the only way I do that is when you share, when you like, when you get this video and all of our other content out to other folks. So if you want to help me help the world and change the world and change the way the world sees health, because that really is what it's about. I mean, today it's hard to be healthy because so many people have such a skewed reality around what that means. And so your family members may be at odds with your philosophy. Your neighbors are at odds with your healthy philosophy. And how do we change them? How do we help them understand that our philosophy is best for good health? And how do we create a healthier society where people think more clearly, have more energy, have less problems as a result of health complications, spend less money as a result of healthcare bills? Well, we get them the right information, and I can't do that without you. So again, thanks in advance for helping me reach more people. We'll see you next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, and back again on Thursday at 12:30 Central Time for live Q&A. Thanks so much and have a great weekend.